guys, welcome back to my channel. Please don't skip the intro as I'm going to be going over some important details about the projects that I'm going to be showing you today. In this video I'm going to be showing you how you can make these cute pumpkins and this very adorable ghost. But just a little disclaimer before we get started, these are by no means my pattern and the credit goes to the respective owners of the patterns, which I've linked in the description box down below. The patterns included in this video are adjustable and I've showed you in the video how you can make your projects bigger or smaller based on your preferences. If you're a beginner, I recommend watching the whole video as I go into details about the stitches as I'm making the pumpkin, and then when I show you how to make the ghost, I kind of just skim over the pattern as I've already mentioned how to do the stitches and I didn't want this video to be long and repetitive. Also, as you've probably read from the title, this is going to be a new series starting on my channel. Well, leading up till Halloween, I'm going to be showing you some fall/Halloween stuff that you can create. In next week's video, I'm going to be showing you how you can make this very adorable cat with this little witch's hat. And then I'm also going to be showing you how you can make the hat to fit the actual size of your cat. Please consider subscribing so you don't miss the tutorial for this adorable little cat. As always, these are my socials, so make sure that you either tag me or send me a picture of your creations as I would love to see them. And let's get on to the tutorial. To make the pumpkin, you're gonna need some orange yarn and then some green for the vine and some brown for the stem. I'm using a weight 200% acrylic yarn. I'm using my 2.5mm hook. And you also need a stitch marker, a bobby pin, or just a yarn of a different color to mark the ends of your row. First, you want to start by making a magic ring in the color of the body of the pumpkin. I'm using orange. So wrap your yarn around your two fingers like this. And then go under this first strand of yarn, grab the second one right here, twist it, and now use this tail that's attached to your working ball of yarn. And then chain one and now take it off your fingers, and that's a magic circle or a magic ring, whatever you want to call it. And now we're going to put 6 single crochets into it. So I just put the 6 and you can count them from here: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And now I'm gonna pull on this tail so that I close my magic circle. And now I like to mark the last stitch of the row. If you're used to marking the first stitch of the row, then just go ahead and do that. But this is how I learned to do it when I first started crocheting, so I just stuck with doing it like that. And now for row 2, we're gonna make increases all around. So first we have to find the first stitch that we did. If you look closely here, there is this little loop here, and then there's this V. This V right here is the stitch. This loop is just from doing the first chain that you do when you make a magic circle. So be careful to not crochet into this, but go into this stitch right here. So it also might be a little bit tight because it's your first stitch, but just go into it. Make sure you're going under both loops. And now we're gonna make a single crochet. So yarn over. Now you have 2 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through both loops. And now we want to make an increase, and an increase is essentially 2 single crochets into the same stitch. So now we're going to go back into that same stitch and make another single crochet, and that is an increase. And now we're going to repeat doing this for all the remaining 5 stitches. So again, find your next stitch, go into it, make a single crochet, then back into that same stitch, make another single crochet, and then just repeat doing this. In total, at the end of this row, or at the end of row 2, you're gonna have 12 stitches. So I've reached this last stitch where my stitch marker is, and I'm just gonna take it out for now, and we're gonna make the increases into this last stitch as well. And this is the end of our row 2. So again, I'm gonna put the stitch marker into the last stitch of the row, and you're gonna repeat doing this where you put the stitch marker in the last stitch of the row for all the rows. To start off row 3, we're gonna follow this sequence, and you'll see it as you progress with the rows, like you'll see the sequence. But for row 3, we're gonna start by making a single crochet first. So find your next stitch, mine's right here, make a single crochet, and now in the next stitch you want to make an increase. So in the next stitch you put 2 single crochets. And this is the pattern that you're gonna follow for row 3. So again, now after I put the 2 single crochets, I'm gonna put 1 single crochet in the next stitch and then 2 single crochets in the next stitch. So just, it's alternating between 1 single crochet and then 1 increase. If you do the pattern correctly, always in the last stitch you're gonna be making an increase. So now I'm gonna make my increase and then put back my stitch marker, and now we're ready to start row 4. Row 4, we're gonna make 2 single crochets in the next 2 stitches. So that means that 1 single crochet in this stitch and then 1 single crochet in the next stitch. And then after doing your 2 single crochets in the 2 stitches, you're gonna do 2 single crochets into the same stitch, or basically an increase. So you do 2 single crochets and then 1 increase. I've reached my last stitch, and my last stitch is an increase. So now we're gonna start off with round 5, and right now you've gotten the hang of how the pattern works. So this last row we did 2 single crochets, 1 increase, and now for row 5 we're gonna do 3 single crochets, 1 increase, and then for row 6 we're gonna do 4 single crochets, 1 increase. And I have the pattern here on the screen. I'm gonna make row 5 and 6 off camera, and then I'm gonna meet you back for row 7. Just finished row 6, and I'm gonna show you how you can count your rows. So starting from this middle that we made right here, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So now we know that we've done 6 rows so far. And when you look at the shape of like your work right now, it looks like a hexagon, which is like completely okay, but this can also help you keep track of the number of the stitches that you've done. Right here, from one point of the hexagon to the other point, these points are the increases. So when you start counting from after this increase, that's 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then you see an increase here. If you've accidentally miscounted something, like for example, instead of doing 4 single crochets, you've done 3 for one of these sides, you can very easily go back and count your stitches and see for which side of the hexagon you made the mistake, so that you don't have to unravel the whole row. But now that we're done with row 6, we're gonna get started on row 7. And from row 7 till row 10, it's all just gonna be single crochets all along. So we're not making any increases, and you don't have to count anything. We're just making single crochets all along. Repeat this for row 7, 8, 9, and 10, and then I'll meet you at the end of row 10. Finished with row 10. Now we're gonna start with our decreases, and before we built up from 0 to 4 increases, and now we're going to be doing the same in decreases, except that we're mirroring it. So we're going to start with 4 single crochets, 1 decrease, then 3 single crochets, 1 decrease, 2 single crochets, 1 decrease, and so on and so forth. With row 11, you're going to make single crochets into the next 4 stitches. So and now we're gonna make a decrease, and I like to make an invisible decrease for all of my projects. I think that it just looks better. If you're used to doing the normal decrease, then just go ahead and do that. But to make an invisible decrease, you have to look at your stitches. You have a front loop and then a back loop. So you're going to pick up the front loop, which is the loop that is the closest to you, of your next 2 stitches. So I just picked up the front loop of the first stitch. I'm again going into the next stitch and picking up the front loop only, and now I have 3 loops on my hook. I'm gonna yarn over and pull through 2, and then yarn over and pull through 2, and that is an invisible decrease. So now again for the next 4 stitches, I'm just gonna do a single crochet. Make sure that you pick up both loops, and now I'm gonna make an invisible decrease again. So again, just to show you, pick up the 2 front loops of the next 2 stitches, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2, and repeat doing this 4 single crochets, 1 decrease until the end of row 11. Why I like invisible decreases better is because you can't even tell that you've done a decrease, whereas with a normal decrease it kind of leaves a hole or like a gap in your work, and it makes it look a little bit unprofessional. Reach the last 2 stitches of row 11, and you're gonna make a decrease with these last 2 stitches. So just take out your stitch marker and then pick up the front loops of the next 2 stitches, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2, and now we're gonna put our stitch marker back in this stitch. Just for a little bit of clarification, your next stitch is this right here. It's not this one. This is still part of the decrease. So now when you want to start with your next row, you're going to go into this stitch right here, not this one. You're going into this. Stuff your pumpkin pretty firmly so that it keeps its shape. So just try to squeeze in as much as polyfill as you can, but make sure that you're not doing it to the point where like they start sticking out of your stitches. Like when you put a lot of stuffing, it starts stretching your stitches and there'll be little gaps and holes in between them, and then you can like see the polyfill from inside. So just be careful. I think that now like my stuffing has reached its max point. Start with the next row, and I kind of like to use my fingers to push down on the stuffing so that it doesn't get in the way of crocheting. So I just did my last decrease and we don't need the stitch marker anymore. And as you can see, there's still a little opening here, and we're gonna close that. First, you're going to go into the next stitch and then make a slip stitch and then chain 1, and now we want to leave a pretty long tail because you're going to use this tail to go back and make the little ridges so that you have a decent amount of tail, and then cut this back and pull all this tail through that little chain that you made. Put the yarn through your needle, and now we're gonna go through these stitches. I still have this tail on my needle. I'm gonna go back from this bottom right here. Like you can go from any of these stitches, it doesn't really matter because this is like the bottom of the pumpkin, and when you put it like this part, you're not gonna see it. But yeah, just like try to find the stitch that is right in the middle, and then I put my needle through it, and I want to come out of this hole that is right here. This is like at the very middle of the pumpkin on the top. So just put your needle through that and try to come out of that hole, and then pull the tail. And now we're gonna divide the pumpkin into 6 sections to make the 6 ridges. So now to make the first, I'm not really sure what they're called. Are they called ridges? I'm not really sure, but to like make the first little bump that you have on the pumpkin, you want to grab this yarn and then go back again. I have the yarn on my needle, so again I'm gonna put my needle through that same hole and then come out of the same hole at the top right here. And now you're gonna pull this super tight so that it kind of creates this effect. So just pull it super tight. I'm gonna make the one that is right on the opposite end of it. This is just how I like to do it, and like this I just make sure that these stay as tight as they possibly can. So now again you're gonna go back into that hole at the bottom, and then you're gonna come out of the hole at the top, and now you're gonna adjust this tail. Like we kind of made a little loop here. It's a little bit too big to be fitted on the camera, but you're gonna adjust this yarn so that it's like right in front of the other one right here. So here, this is the loop that I'm talking about. So just pull it to make sure that it aligns with the other one, and then now you can go ahead and pull this one tight as well. So that's basically how you're gonna make all these little bumps, like all these little ridges. Finished doing this, and mine are definitely not equally spaced, but that's okay. It just adds it a little bit more personality. And from like going back and forth, if you like accidentally pull out some stuffing at the top right here, it's completely okay. You get covered up by the stem and the vine anyways, so you can't really see it. Now I like just pull on this tail to make sure that it's extra secure, and then I just go into one of these stitches that is close by, and I do this so that I can pull up a loop. I'm gonna make a knot right here. So this is like a little loop that I just made. So now I'm gonna go back into that loop, and then I'm just gonna pull it tight, and like this I can cut this yarn without worrying that it's gonna unravel. So make that little loop and then go back into any of these random stitches, just so that I want to pull this yarn through like the body of the pumpkin, and then cut it, pull it out, and now I'm just gonna cut it. For the stem, I'm using a brown yarn, and you're gonna start off by making a magic circle again. So just make the magic circle however you're comfortable, and we're gonna put 6 single crochets into it. Now pull it tight from here, and I'm gonna mark the last stitch of my row, and this was row 1. And so now for row 2 and row 3, what you're gonna do is just you're gonna do single crochets all around. So you're gonna do 6 single crochets. Again, I know it's kind of hard to see the stitches with this brown yarn, but just make 6 single crochets all around for this row and then the next row, and then you're done with the stem. The row 2, if your work is bunching up like this, just use something else. Like I like to use the pointy edges of my scissors. You're like uncurling it kind of. I'm not really sure what the proper term for this is, but just do something so that it doesn't bunch up like that, it doesn't curl up like that. And if you want your stem to be a little bit longer, then you can just go ahead and do a 4th row as well, but I'm happy with this size. Like I think that this is a good size. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna go into the next stitch, and then I'm gonna make a slip stitch and then chain 1 and cut the yarn, leaving a little bit of tail so that I can just use this tail to sew on the stem onto my pumpkin. And just pull it nice and tight. To sew on the stem, I am using my darning needle, and I'm just gonna place it like right in the middle right here, and then go through just some of these stitches. And then go back through the stitches on my stem. and just repeat doing that. There isn't a right or wrong way to do this, just do whatever works for you. So I just go through these until I'm happy with how my stem looks. I'm just gonna go back through the pumpkin and pull this brown yarn through the pumpkin again, and then cut it. Little tail that hangs off, just push it back into the pumpkin. Just like to make a little loop like this. And now I'm gonna insert my hook into any of these random stitches that are on the side of the stem. So let's just say this, for example. So insert your hook into it and then put this little loop that you made on top of your hook, and then start chaining. We're gonna chain 8. So and then after you make the chains, starting from the second chain from your hook, so not this one but this one, you're going to make increases or 2 single crochets into every one of these stitches going down, and this is gonna help curl the little, and this is gonna create like the little curling effect. Just go into these stitches and make an increase. After you make your increases down the chain, just go back into any of these stitches on the pumpkin and then make a slip stitch with the green yarn. So pull the yarn back on your, and then chain 1, cut the yarn, pull it tight, and I like to make a couple knots with this tail that was from making the chain and this tail from fastening off, just so that it's extra secure and it doesn't unravel. So just make 2 knots. Again, taking my needle, I like to pull these into the body of the pumpkin, and then I can just cut them off from there. This is what the final pumpkin looks like when you follow the pattern. And for this one, I only did up to 2 increases and everything else is the same, except for when I started to decrease again. I started decreasing from 2. And for the stem, I did a magic ring with 3 single crochets in it instead of 6. And then for the vine, I only chained 6, just so that everything would like become smaller and more proportionate to the size of this pumpkin. And the large pumpkin is about 2 inches or 5 centimeters in size, and then the smaller pumpkin is about 3 centimeters or about 1.5 inch in size. So if you want to adjust the size of your pumpkin, you can very easily do so by doing more or less increases. Also, side note, as I've mentioned, I used a 2.5mm hook and 100% weight to acrylic yarn. If you're using a bigger hook and a bigger yarn, your pumpkins will definitely come out bigger, but this is a pattern that looks good with any hook size and any yarn size. You'll have a bigger pumpkin, which is not a problem at all. To make the ghost, I'm still using my 2.5mm hook and I've switched to a white yarn. And you're gonna start off by making a magic circle again, and then you're gonna put 6 single crochets into it, pull it tight, and mark this last stitch of the row. And now, similar to the pumpkin, for this next row we're gonna make increases all around, so in total you're gonna have 12 stitches. And now for the next row we're gonna repeat the sequence of 1 single crochet and then 1 increase in the next stitch. And now for row 4, do 2 single crochets in the next 2 stitches and then 1 increase. So far the pattern has been like the pumpkin, and it's gonna change after this row. So again, till the end of this row you do 2 single crochets and then 1 increase. For row 5, 6, 7, and 8, you're just going to do single crochets all around, and it's going to be a total of 24 stitches in every round. So just single crochet until you reach the end of row 8. I just finished my 8th row, and again you can just count them from here. And now we're gonna start on row 9, and on this row you're gonna make the little arms for the ghost. Like, this is a no sew pattern, so we're gonna make a bobble stitch for the arms, so I'm gonna show you how to do that. But we're gonna start with doing 6 single crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And now in the next stitch we're gonna make our first bobble stitch, which is gonna be the first arm. And to make a bobble stitch is basically like a couple of unfinished double crochets into the same stitch. So wrap your yarn around your hook, go into the next stitch, grab your yarn. Now you have 3 loops on your hook. You're gonna yarn over and pull through only 2. And then again, you're gonna wrap your yarn around your hook, go back into that same stitch, and then now you have 4 loops. You're gonna only pull through 2. So basically with a bobble stitch is you only pull through 2 loops, and I'm gonna do 5 bubble stitches into this one stitch. When patterns ask you to put a bobble stitch, you could change up the number of the stitches you want to put into the bubble based on how big you want the little arm to be. So I just do 5 because I find that like that's the most suitable, but you could also do 4 or 6 based on however you like it. So again, I just wrapped my yarn around my hook, inserted my hook back into that first stitch, and now I'm gonna yarn over and pull through only the first 2 loops. And then that's my third. You can count them from here, 1, 2, 3, and then back into that same stitch, yarn over, pull through 2, and again back into that same stitch, yarn over, pull through 2, and now we have 6 loops on our hook, and we're gonna yarn over and pull through all 6 together, and that is 1 bubble stitch. And now after our bubble, we're gonna do 10 single crochets. So find your next stitch and then make a normal single crochet. When you do that, your bubble kind of just sticks inside, so just push it out from the other side. And then that was 1, so 2, 3, until you have 10. After doing 10 single crochets, you're gonna again make a bubble stitch. So again, wrap your yarn around your hook, go into the next stitch, yarn over, and now you have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through 2, and then again back into that same stitch, yarn over, pull through 2, same stitch, yarn over and pull through 2, and then repeat doing this until you have 5 stitches. And now you have 6 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 6. And now we're going to do 6 single crochets until we meet our stitch marker, which is the end of the row. So if you're using safety eyes, now is a good time to put them on between row 7 and 8, and then have them 5 stitches apart. I'm going to glue on the eyes, so I'm just going to skip this step. I want to turn my ghost into a little keychain, so I just have some white yarn here, and I'm gonna cut about like 10 centimeters, and then I'm gonna tie a knot here, and then I have to tie another one. Go like right down the middle here. This is like the middle of our magic circle, and then put this onto my hook and then pull it up. And see those knots that we made? They prevent it from coming out of the little hole. So now you can hang your little ghost like this. Now moving back to the ghost, rounds 10 and 11, we're gonna do single crochets all around, and your final stitch count should be 24. I recommend keeping count of the stitches, like count the stitches as you go for this row, just to make sure that you're not accidentally increasing or decreasing, because it can be a little confusing when you go over the bubbles. But yeah, finish doing single crochets for this round, and then another round of single crochets for the next round, and then I'll meet you back for row 12. After row 11, I'm gonna only mark the back loop of my last stitch right here, because now for row 12, we're gonna start working into the front loops. Starting from here, when you look at your stitches, there is the front loop, which is the loop that is the closest to you, and then there is the back loop, which is the loop that is the furthest from you. So starting from the front loop here, pick it up. We're gonna put 3 stitches into this one. So we're gonna start with a normal single crochet, and then now we're gonna make a half double crochet, which you wrap your yarn around your hook, go back into that same stitch, pull up your yarn, and now you have 3 loops. So yarn over and pull through all 3, and that's a half double crochet. And then now back into that same stitch, make a single crochet, and now in the next stitch, again only the front loop. For this row, we're only working in the front loops. So now for the next stitch, in the front loop, pick it up and make a slip stitch. And this is basically what's gonna create the little ruffled edge of the ghost. So now in the next stitch, again only pick up the front loop, make 1 single crochet, and then 1 half double crochet back into that same stitch, and then 1 single crochet again into that same stitch, and then a slip stitch in the front loop of the next stitch. So you're basically gonna repeat this pattern of into the same stitch you put a single crochet, a half double crochet, and then a single crochet, and then in the stitch next to it you put a slip stitch. You're gonna repeat doing this, and it's gonna give you this little ruffled edge for the body of your ghost. And then once you're done with the row, your last stitch is gonna be a slip stitch in this front loop. So just make the slip stitch, and this is what the ghost looks like. So now for row 12, we're gonna make single crochets all along these back loops, and in total you're gonna have 24 single crochets. So we already marked this back loop here, so now we're gonna go into the back loop of the first stitch where we started, and then make a single crochet, and you're just gonna repeat doing that. You can kind of see the back loops. Once you can kind of fold these little ruffles that you just made, and then once you do that, you see these little lines. These are all the back loops, and so you're basically just single crocheting into these back loops. I just reached my last stitch, which I put into the back loop, so I'm just going to take that out and then single crochet into that. And now for the next rows, we're going to work into both loops, so I'm just going to put the stitch marker back into the both loops. So I'm going to go ahead and do my decreases, and then I'll meet you guys back. But just make sure that you stuff your ghost after this row. So I'm gonna sew this shut just like how I did with the pumpkin, but this time you don't need to leave that long of a tail. So just make a slip stitch into your next stitch, and then chain 1, and then cut your yarn and pull up this loop, And now I'm gonna use my darning needle to again go through the stitches. Like so. Just like so. And now you're done with your ghost. Now I'm just gonna tuck this tail through a couple of these stitches and then cut it just so that it's all extra secure. Kind of just flatten out this end like this so that your ghost stays like this. This is the final ghost. I only had 5mm eyes. You would ideally want to use 6 or maybe even 7mm eyes. So it kind of looks funky with the eyes being this small, but I think that it still turned out pretty cute. This is what the final ghost looks like when you follow the pattern that I showed you. Just to adjust it a little bit, I used the same pattern, but I did 2 more rows of single crochets when I was doing the torso before I started making the arms, and so the ghost is a little bit longer. Again, similar to these pumpkins, this one is 2 inches or 5 centimeters long, and then this one is about 1.5 inches or 3 centimeters long. So that was it for today's tutorial. Make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss any future videos, and I'll see you next time. Bye!